We start this morning in the Middle East, where overnight Israel launched more rockets into southern Gaza as the U.S. is deploying a guided missile submarine and carrier strike group with fighter jets to the region.
Israel is bracing for retaliation from Iran after the killing of Hamas's former political chief last month in Tehran. Now, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is heading to the region. He hopes to push peace talks and prevent what many fear could lead to all-out war in the region. For more on this, we're joined by NBC News military analyst, Medal of Honor recipient, Colonel Jack Jacobs. He'll be with us shortly with analysis. First, White House correspondent Monica Alba joins us from Washington. Also, NBC News correspondent Raf Sanchez is in Tel Aviv. So, Raf, we're going to start with you. At least 10 people were killed overnight in strikes by Israel targeting a home in the southern part of Gaza. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Joe, this strike took place in the city of Han Yunis. It's Gaza's second largest city, and it has been the scene of such intense Israeli military operations over the last 10 days or so. And what's notable is that Israel carried out a very large operation in Han Yunis a few months ago. They said they had cleared Hamas out, and here we are with Israeli forces once again back in the city. In terms of this house, Gaza's civil defense say they pulled the bodies of at least 10 people out from underneath the rubble. Israel's military hasn't specified what exactly they were targeting in terms of that house, but they are saying broadly that they are fighting regrouped Hamas formations in the city of Han Yunis. And of course, this comes just a couple of days before Israel and Hamas, at least in theory, are supposed to be back at the negotiating table in either Cairo or Doha at these U.S.-pushed talks to try to get a ceasefire deal over the line. Guys.
Raf, today is a holy day in Israel. It sparked a renewed push by Israeli settlers to move back into northern Gaza. Tell us what today is, why it's important, and what you're seeing because of it, what I just mentioned, and any other protests related to the holiday.
Yeah, Savannah, so this holiday is called Tish B'Av, and it commemorates the destruction of the Jewish temple in Jerusalem. It's sort of a day of mourning for many Israelis, but it's also a day of action for some of these right-wing settlers. So we've seen some of them camped near Gaza, calling for Israel to reestablish the settlements inside of the Strip that it pulled up back in 2005. The Netanyahu government has said it will not allow Israeli settlements inside Gaza, but there's a lot of concern that it could happen anyway. And then we are also seeing Israeli settlers up on the Temple Mount, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the holiest, most sensitive site in Jerusalem. And very, very unusually today, Jewish settlers led by National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, the most far-right member of the Israeli government, actually prayed in front of the mosque today. That is a violation of the 50-plus year status quo up there, which says that Jews can visit the Temple Mount, but they cannot pray up there. And that has brought at least a mild rebuke by Prime Minister Netanyahu, who says Itamar Ben-Gvir, the national security minister, cannot just formulate his own policy independent of the government. Guys.
Raf, what about this claim by Hamas that at least one Israeli hostage has been killed by Hamas guard and 2 other hostages were seriously wounded in a separate incident?
Yeah, this is this very unusual and worrying statement that came from Hamas last night. They effectively said that one of their guards was so enraged by the killing of civilians in Israeli strikes in Gaza that he killed a male Israeli hostage in Hamas captivity. They also said last night that 2 female hostages were wounded and efforts were being made to try to save their lives. Hamas sort of making out that this was not a guard acting under orders, that this was somebody who snapped. The Israeli military says they are aware of this claim by Hamas. They are not able to independently verify it. And at this point, Hamas has not identified any of the hostages it says was involved. Guys.
Monica, let's bring you into this conversation. The U.S. now has a guided missile submarine as well as an aircraft carrier strike group, as we mentioned, in the area. Obviously, a large show of force here. What message is the Biden administration trying to send at this tense time?
Well, and it's fairly unusual, Savannah, that they would announce in advance that a submarine like this, that you would associate typically with more of a stealth operation, is moving into a specific region to support a carrier group. But this is something where we have seen during the course of this conflict, the force posture of the United States can be shifted at any time. And the Defense Secretary, Lloyd Austin, specifically is moving some of these things around in anticipation of that potential retaliation, which is what the U.S. is spelling out very clearly could come in the next few days. They have been watching it very closely now for more than a week or so with that kind of a position. So they're saying we want to be cautious, we want to be careful, but if something does happen, we need to be ready to be able to support Israel in its mission to defend itself or in anything else that could escalate further in the region. That has been a really top concern for President Biden, which is why he has spent some time in the last couple of days on the phone with allies like the UK, like Germany, France, Italy, trying to shore up support altogether, not just for that, but for a potential ceasefire deal as well.
Yeah, Monica, I want to ask you more about the peace talks, especially with Secretary Blinken heading to the region. Just how much does the possibility of a strike by Iran threaten these negotiations?
It certainly could derail them, and the National Security Council acknowledged as much yesterday. They said, look, we hope these continue. We are planning to send our own representatives to be a part of it. We want everybody to come to the table. But they acknowledged that if there is something of really significant escalation in the coming days, that could move it. But President Biden is urging everybody to really come to the table on August 15th to accept these final terms, to try to close the gaps. But we know that those have been the most difficult. We have been this close before, according to senior administration officials, only for the talks to collapse and fall apart. And that is possibly what could happen here, even though they're urging everybody to consider this a last and best final offer, potentially.
Monica Alba, Ralph Sanchez, a lot to cover this morning. Thank you both.
For some perspective on what's happening, let's bring in NBC News military analyst and Medal of Honor recipient, Colonel Jack Jacobs. Always good to have you with us, Colonel. Thanks for your time. So both U.S. and Israeli intelligence indicate Iran could launch a strike any day now. We remember the retaliatory strikes Iran was able to launch against Israel in April that were largely defeated, deflected. Do you think this time around things could look different? What are you concerned about?
I'm very much concerned about what the targets will be. To the extent that Iran launches a similar strike and that it's repelled by and large, probably that will be sufficient for Iran to say that they've done what they wanted to do, what they needed to do to save face. But to the extent that people are killed in built-up areas like Tel Aviv, to the extent that the Iron Dome does not perform adequately to protect Israeli citizens, most people fear that this will be an enormous expansion of the conflict there.
Colonel Jacobs, I want to ask you about today's reported meeting between Palestinian President Abbas and Russian President Putin. What exactly would they meet about? How concerned should the U.S. be about this?
Well, it looks very concerning, but there's something to keep in mind, and that is that Abbas is very poorly thought of in Gaza. As a matter of fact, doesn't have a lot of support even in the West Bank. Not too many Palestinians trust him, and it's difficult to envision a circumstance in which Abbas would take over control of Gaza. Nevertheless, if Israel decides it's going to vacate Gaza, which it has in the past, there's an opening, of course, for Abbas and to take over, and indeed for there to be some influence from Putin. It's not likely to happen. Israel is very much concerned about keeping control in Gaza. And as a matter of fact, one of the recent stumbling blocks to a negotiated settlement has been an increase in Israel's concern about Israel's controlling the southern border of Gaza. Probably not much to make of that meeting, but we'll see what comes out of it.
Colonel, this all comes, as we've mentioned, as the U.S. military is speeding up its deployment to the region. Given what we know, what do you think the U.S. military strategy will be in the region once its forces are in place and should something happen?
Well, deterrence, and that's the principal reason why, and the stated reason why all those forces are there. There may be even more forces sent there. It's to deter Iran from doing any more than it did before, any more than retaliating to keep face. We have to keep in mind, though, that there's something going on inside Iran. The new president, who is supposed to be something of a reformer, apparently is not. And as a result of that, his vice president has quit. So it's extremely difficult to see what is going on inside Iran and what will come of their decision to attack.
Colonel Jack Jacobs, as always, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much.
You bet.
The road to the White House made a stop on X overnight. That's where former President Donald Trump was interviewed live by the social media site's owner, Elon Musk. Their chat got off to a rough start after it was delayed by tech issues. Musk says the delay was caused by a massive online attack against the site, but that claim has not been independently verified.
Once things finally did get underway, Trump did most of the talking. He threatened to close the Department of Education. He repeated debunked claims, and he attacked Kamala Harris's resume at the border.
And she's in charge of it because, you know, now she's trying to say she had nothing to do with it. And she's such a liar because she was called the border czar the first day, and it was on the headlines of every newspaper. She's the border czar, and she never even went there.
For their part, the Harris campaign slammed the interview, releasing a statement that said, in part, Trump's entire campaign is in service of people like Elon Musk and himself, self-obsessed rich guys who will sell out the middle class and who cannot run a live stream in the year 2024.
The FBI says it's investigating alleged efforts to hack both the Trump and the Biden-Harris campaigns.
A Trump campaign spokesperson said it had been hacked earlier this summer, claiming that it was part of an Iranian hacking operation. Iran's representative to the United Nations has denied the country's involvement.
NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delanian joins us now to talk more about this. So, Ken, walk us through what exactly the FBI is looking into here. Who is at the center of these attempted hacks?
Good morning, Joe and Savannah. Well, we're told the FBI is now investigating attempted hacks against both presidential campaigns. 3 advisors to the Biden-Harris campaign were targeted, we are told, although there's no indication the hack was successful in that case. And one former advisor to former President Trump, who has identified himself as Roger Stone, infamous Roger Stone, who says he's been told that his email accounts have been compromised. And then a current official in the Trump presidential campaign, we're told, has been targeted. The FBI is investigating all this and whether this hack is tied to the government of Iran and what information has been disclosed. News organizations, including Politico and the New York Times, have said that they were presented with what appeared to be internal documents from the Trump campaign, including a 271-page dossier on vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance, internal campaign research on him. They haven't published any of that so far, but they said it appears to be authentic. It appears to be the fruits of a potential hack, and that's what the FBI right now is investigating.
As we mentioned, the Trump campaign is blaming Iran for this, saying it was part of a broader hacking operation that Microsoft had flagged on Friday. Tell us about that and what the tech company is saying about all this and Iran's involvement.
Yeah, that's right, Savannah. That's why we believe it's Iran, because Microsoft, which has vast visibility over the internet and is itself a cybersecurity company, published a report on Friday saying that Iran, as part of its efforts to influence the presidential campaign, had attempted to hack a senior advisor, former advisor to the Trump campaign, who then communicated with a current advisor. They sketched all that out. They say it was the Trump campaign, but people are putting 2 and 2 together, and Donald Trump himself said that he had been told that his campaign had been hacked. And so Microsoft, though, isn't talking because they have an obligation to keep confidential the information of companies with which they do business and campaigns. And so far, they're not saying publicly that these are the same things, but we believe that they are.
Ken, big picture, this is a huge worry as we head into the election. How are intelligence agencies working to combat these hacks and the spread of misinformation in the lead up to the election? I have to imagine cybersecurity experts don't think enough is being done.
They really don't, Joe. And there's almost 2 different questions, right? There's the disinformation question. Intelligence agencies say if a foreign government presents, say, a deep fake video of Donald Trump or whatever that's fake, they're prepared to flag that and say publicly that that's not true and try to get the message out. What we have here, though, is a hack and dump operation of the kind we saw in 2016, where legitimate information appears to have been stolen from a presidential campaign and offered to the news media. So in this case, it's not really the intelligence agencies we should be wondering about. It's the news media. What are we going to do when confronted with real information that is the fruits of a foreign intelligence operation? Right now, none of these news organizations have published any of this material. Remember, in 2016, the Russians took it directly to WikiLeaks, which put it out there on the web. That hasn't happened so far, but it certainly could. And then we're all going to be confronted with a dilemma here. What do we do with newsworthy information that may be a result of Iran or another country trying to manipulate American politics? It's a really tough situation, guys.
All right. Ken Delaney and Ken, thank you so much. Let's go to California now, where millions around the L.A. area were briefly rattled by an earthquake.
Yeah, the 4.4 magnitude earthquake happened right after 12 p.m. Pacific time. As you're going to see here, it lasted a few seconds. The city of Los Angeles reported no significant infrastructure damage or injuries, although in Pasadena it did lead to a burst pipe at the city hall. The earthquake was followed by a 2.1 magnitude aftershock felt more than 100 miles away in the San Diego area. Let's also get you some weather. Tropical storm Ernesto is making its way through the Caribbean with warnings in effect from Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands.
Let's get the details on that. Plus what's happening across the U.S. with your Morning News Now weather. Chief Meteorologist Ryan Hanrahan from our affiliate in Connecticut joins us now. Ryan, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Joe. Good morning, Savannah. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, we've got Tropical Storm Ernesto now just beginning to move into the Caribbean, and it looks like Ernesto is going to get very close to Puerto Rico later today and tonight. Let's take a look at the storm right now. You can see it moving from the Atlantic into the Caribbean. There's the swirl there. We've got winds of 40 miles per hour, so it's still a fairly minor tropical storm as these things go. It's moving to the west pretty quickly, to the west at about 20 miles per hour. And that westerly trend is going to continue through the day. We've got a tropical storm warning in effect now for the Leeward Islands, the Virgin Islands, and also for Puerto Rico. That means tropical storm conditions are expected there shortly. And it looks like Puerto Rico is going to get quite a bit of rain from the storm as it moves on through, some gusty winds as well. So here's the expected track. The storm begins to move to the north, so it gets very close to Puerto Rico. Here's Wednesday at 2 a.m., very close to San Juan, winds of 60 miles per hour. Then the storm strengthens as it comes to the north, and it looks like it becomes a fairly formidable hurricane, a Category 2 hurricane, very, very close to Bermuda, but it looks like it stays pretty far to the east of the mainland United States. So there will be some impacts in terms of some big swells and surf and some rip currents, but no direct impacts expected with that storm tracking far to the east out into the open Atlantic. Now, the story across the lower 48 is the difference in temperatures from the south to the north, because it is nice and cool and refreshing across the northern tier from the Midwest to the Great Lakes into New England. The reason why we've got a nice high pressure system that has settled into the Midwest. On the backside of it, you've got the wind coming down from the north, so it's much less humid. It's very, very comfortable. But from the plains to the deep south, it is hot and it is humid. You're on the other side of this front. The wind is coming up from the Gulf of Mexico, and there is quite a bit of heat and humidity out there. And that combination has led to a heat advisory in effect for a good chunk of the south from Dallas to Houston, over toward New Orleans, portions of Florida as well. An excessive heat warning in effect now for the Oklahoma City area. 38 million people impacted by all the heat and humidity. So in terms of temperatures out there, we're looking at high temperatures today up around 100 degrees across a good chunk of Texas. You factor in the humidity. Dallas today feels like 107, New Orleans 109, Orlando 104. Tomorrow, not much relief. In fact, that ridge of high pressure sort of flexes a little bit, so it turns even hotter across the south and the plains. Look at Dallas, feels like 105 tomorrow, 107 in Jacksonville. But on the other side of things are looking a whole lot nicer. Very refreshing air from the Midwest to the Great Lakes to the Northeast. Chicago, 79 degrees on Thursday, only 81 on Saturday. In New York, temperatures in the low and mid 80s over the next couple of days. So especially in the Northeast, it's been a really hot and humid summer so far, but not for this week. We're getting a nice break.
We'll take it just in time for the pumpkin spice latte, which is...
Whoa, don't rush it,
no,
Joe.
I think it's coming soon. I think we got a couple weeks. And
I don't like that, though, yet. I'm like, I love the seasons, you know that, but not ready for it yet.
Yeah, let's wait till after Labor Day. How about that?
Early August.
It's going to come before that. Just warning you.
Totally
just preparing you. All right. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.